Welcome back to Monster Tamer, a 2D Pokemon-like RPG created Phaser 3. If you missed the previous videos, there'll be links in the video description to the source code up to this point, as well as the complete source code for this video. There'll also be a link to the previous videos if you'd like to catch up. So let's get started. Alright, so now we've verified that our game object for our ice attack is appearing. What we're going to do now is we're going to go ahead and create our animations, and we'll go ahead and test playing our animation. So to do this, what we need to do is we come into our constructor for our ice shard class. And what we're going to do is we're just going to add a comment real quick. And so we're going to do create game objects. Then what we'll do is we'll add another comment and we'll do create animations. And so to create animations in Phaser, what we need to do is we need to reference our scene. So we'll reference our protected scene property. And then we're going to go ahead and call the animation manager. And so we can do that by doing the .anims property. And what this will do is on our animation manager, this is where we can create new animations and store those in our cache. And then that way we can play them later when we reference our sprite game object. And so to create a new animation, we're going to use the create method. And so when we call the create method, this is going to expect our animation configuration. And so this is where we're going to specify what the name of our animation is going to be, so our unique key to identify it. And we can specify things like our frame rate, so how fast we want this animation to be, if we want it to automatically repeat, if there's a delay. And this is also where you specify your frames that make up this animation. So in our sprite sheets, currently each of our sprite sheets is tied to one attack, and so we would just reference that whole sprite sheet to go ahead and reference our animation. But if you can imagine if we had a bigger sprite sheet where we had multiple animations, this is how we can specify the individual frames that make up that animation. And so what we're going to do for our configuration, what we'll do is we'll go ahead and do our ice shard. We'll do that animation first. And so we're going to do our key. And so for our key, we'll reference our attack asset keys. And we're going to name this the same as our current asset that's loaded. And so because this is in the animation manager, there'll be no conflicts with our name. So we'll have this unique key to identify this animation. Then we're going to specify our frames. And so for our frames, we're going to reference our scene, our animation manager, and we're going to go ahead and use a method called generate frame numbers. And so what this method is going to do is it's going to allow you to specify an asset, so one of our textures that we want to load, and it's going to go ahead and generate an array of animation frame objects based on the texture key that was provided. And so this is how we can go ahead and create our frames that are needed for this animation. And so what we'll do is we're going to do our attack asset keys, and we're going to reference our ice shard. And then what it's going to do is it's going to generate all of our frames, basically 0 up through 5, because that's all the frames that are currently in this sprite sheet. If we only wanted a subset, we could specify a configuration of where we want to do our start and our end on our frames. We could also specify an array of the actual frame order and the frames that are currently used. But when you want to use the whole sprite sheet, you don't have to provide this. And so we're just going to do our asset name. So after we specify our frames, we're going to use our frame rate. And so this is how fast our animation is going to play. So we'll play it at a frame rate of 8. Then we'll go ahead and set our repeat, and so we're going to do 0. So when we play our attack, we only want the animation to happen one time. But if you can imagine if it's like an attack that needed to do 3 things, we could do 3. Or if it was on repeat, we could do -1. But we don't want it to repeat at all. And so next, we'll go ahead and do our delay, and we're going to set this to 0 milliseconds, so it'll play right away. All right, what that's going to do is that's going to create one of our animations. So we just need to go ahead and create our other one for our ice shard and our start. So we're just going to copy our code, paste it, and we're just going to go ahead and update our reference. And so we'll have our ice shard start for our key and for when we generate our frames. We'll keep the same frame rate and repeat and delay properties as well. All right, so now that we've created our animations, what we're going to go ahead and do next is we're going to implement our play animation method, and then that way we can test our animations. So if we jump over to attack.js real quick, we're going to copy this code here for our method, and we'll add in our public play animation method, and let's get rid of this error. And so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to check if this animation is currently playing. If it is currently playing, we want to go ahead and return and not restart the animation. We only want to play it when it's not currently being used. So then what we would do is we're going to reference this animation is playing, we'll set it to true, and then we're going to go ahead and set our alpha. So initially when we created our game object, we had this set to 0, and so we're going to want to reset that back to 0, and then when we play our animation, we're going to make this visible. So we'll do set alpha, and we'll set it to 1. All right, and then so what we're going to do now, we're actually going to go ahead and play our animation. And so to do that, we can reference our attack game object. So on our sprite, then we can go ahead and do our play method. And now we just need to specify the key to the animation that we created. And then it's going to grab that from our animation manager. And so if we do our attack asset keys and we do our ice shard start, what this should do now is if we call the play animation method, we should see our animation in our game. So if we jump over to our battle scene on our attack, let's go ahead and call play animation, and we'll go ahead and test our changes. And so we'll see right away when our scene starts, we see our ice shard start to build up, and we have our attack animation playing. All right, and so one small change we're going to do is we're going to make our callback actually optional for when we play our animations. And then that way we don't have to provide it, and we're only going to call it if one has been provided. All right, then we jump over to our battle scene. We'll see now our IntelliSense is not saying we need to provide any arguments here. All right, so the last thing we're going to do is we actually need to go ahead and update our animation to play both of our animations. So as you mentioned earlier, our ice shard attack is actually made up of 2 parts. It's going to be our ice shard start, and then after it forms, then we'll go ahead and play our other animation. And so to do that, we need to know when our animation has finished playing. And to know that, we can register an event listener that'll be invoked once our animation is fully done. And so to do that, what we're going to do is we're going to reference our attack game object, and we're going to add an event listener to our game object. And so we're going to use the once method because we want this to be a one-time listener. We only want to invoke it once, and not every time this event could be fired. And so for our event, we're going to listen to our phaser, animations, events, animation complete key, and we're going to go ahead and combine that with our attack asset keys, and then our ice shard start. And then what we'll do is we'll go ahead and provide our callback function that we want to be called when this event happens. And then what we'll do in our callback is this is when we'd actually play our other animation. And so we'll do our attack game object, we'll do play, and we're going to do our attack asset keys, and we will do our ice shard animation. All right, so what we did here is we added an event listener for... All right, so what we did here is on our game object, we added an event listener. And for this event listener, we specified a very specific event that we want to listen to. And the event we added was a concatenation of this animation complete key and the name of our animation that's currently playing. And so what Phaser will do is once an animation is finished, it's going to fire off this animation completion event. And when this event fires, there's 2 ways you can listen for events. One of them is you can listen for all animation completion events. Another is you can listen for the specific event that's tied to the animation that you want to listen for. And to find that, that's just going to be your animation name with a prefix of this animation completion key. And so by listening for an event in this format, we'll know when this animation is done. And then, once that fires, our callback is going to be invoked, and it's going to play our animation. All right, so if we come over to our scene, we should be able to see our changes. So we'll see right away our first animation plays. Once it completes, it starts our second animation. All right, so the last thing we need to do is once our second animation is finished, what we want to do is we want to go ahead and hide our game object, and then we would actually call our callback if one was provided. All right, and so to do that, what we want to do is we're just going to add another event listener. So let's copy this code here, and we're going to go ahead and paste it below it. And what we're going to do is we just need to listen for our other animation name. So with our prefix, we just want to listen for ice shard, and when that happens, we are going to set our animation playing to false. And then we're going to go ahead and update our alpha to be 0 so we can hide our game object. And what we're going to do is we're going to set our frame back to our initial index. And so what we're doing here is we're going to go ahead and reset our frame back to the 0 index. And the reason for that is when your animation plays, it goes ahead and it stops at the last frame and then it stays there as our texture for our game object. And so if we ever want to play this animation a second time, we would want to go ahead and restart our frame back from the beginning. All right, so our last thing we're going to do is we're just going to check if callback was provided, and then we're going to call that callback. And so what we should be able to do is if we come back to our battle scene in our play animation, let's go ahead and add a callback. And what we'll do is we'll do our attack and we will do play animation. And so we can play it twice. And so if we come over to our scene, let's refresh. We'll see our ice shard attack plays, it finishes, and then we play it a second time and then it disappears. All right. And so what we're going to do is let's get rid of our callback. We'll just clean that up. All right, so now that we've validated that our attack for our ice shard is working and our animation is working as well, that actually brings this video to an end. In our next video, we're going to work on adding in our attack animation for our slash attack, and then we're going to go ahead and work on adding these animations to our battle state machine. And so we'll go ahead and connect it to our battle sequence flow. So as a reminder, there's a link in the description of the video to the complete source code for this video. And as always, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the content. If you did enjoy the video, please consider liking the video and hitting the bell icon to be notified when the next video in the series is released. For more great Phaser 3 content, please see the links on your screen now.